Halen and Mael had never laid eyes on Ione before. The pair had assumed she'd been torn apart in the beast wave, and never spared her another thought. Now, faced with her sudden appearance, they both froze solid. Ione's gaze rippled with amusement as she smiled at them, a coy, almost feline curve to her lips. "Two instructors, have you come all this way just for me?" Ione is truly touched. Her tongue swept unconsciously across her crimson lips, the moisture catching the sunlight in a glint that was far too cold to match the warmth of her expression. Mael's face tightened. He straightened, drawing breath to chastise her with all the authority of his rank.
"How utterly—"
Halen's hand clamped down on his shoulder, knuckles white. "No, Ione, something's wrong." Before the words finished settling, a mocking laugh cracked through the air above them. "Of course something's wrong. She's not Ione at all." A rotund shape plummeted from the sky, robes snapping in the wind, a faint gold sheen pulsing from beneath his skin and shoving the dust away. Fatty landed with a bellowing laugh, though his inner voice was muttering hard enough to shake teeth. Asterisk scared of what? Even if she's a demoness, this Pangy has already remade himself. Asterisk. Halen and Mael could only stare, mouths slack, as the man stepped down from the empty air asterisk, walking the sky. Asterisk. A flicker of surprise crossed Ione's face. "Little Fatty, your cultivation, when did it climb so high?" Heh. Fatty's smile never touched his eyes. The gold glow, clinging to his skin, intensified, and when he rolled up his sleeves, the motion carried a low, scorching hum, as if the air itself were blistering. He advanced on Ione's step by unhurried step. "Demoness sister, we meet again. Last time you bullied Pangy quite thoroughly. This debt, how shall we settle it?" The surprise vanished from Ione's face as quickly as it had come, replaced in an instant by that same soul, warping allure. She tilted her head, studying him. "Oh. You want to strike a blow against your big sister." Her face was innocence and seduction woven together, but her eyes remained still as a dead sea, empty of the smallest ripple of tension. Cold crawled down Fatty's spine. Instinct screamed that if he truly fought here, he might not walk away intact. He cleared his throat, courage draining out of him in a rush, and retreated with a sheepish grin. "Forget it. Pangy's heart is too soft for beautiful women." "I won't hold it against you." Ione laughed until she swayed like a blossom on a shaken branch. "Little Fatty, you really are too amusing." Her gaze drifted, and her smile ebbed away like the tide, the seduction melting into something mournful. Tears slid down her cheeks. "Where is little brother Kael? Big sister misses him so." Fatty's heart gave a traitorous lurch. He couldn't meet her eyes, so he blurted out the first words that came. "My brother Guhi misses you too. Misses you to the edge of madness." "Truly." Ione's sorrow snapped into joy, her voice unsteady. "Where is he?" "Great Kai, Imperial Capital," Fatty answered without a shred of hesitation, selling out Kael with the efficiency of a veteran merchant. Ione wiped the tears from her face, bit her lip, and something hard and final settled in her eyes. "I will go find little brother Kael and stay beside him for the rest of my life, never to part." "Big sister, you and my brother Gu are a match made by heaven itself," Fatty declared with flawless sincerity. Ione was delighted. She no longer paid the others the slightest attention and moved to depart for the Imperial Capital at once. Just as she was about to leave, she glanced back over her shoulder and gave a smile so beautiful it stole the breath, yet her eyes were colder than a pit. "Since you have such a sweet tongue, big sister will forgive you this time." Fatty waved after her retreating figure with enormous enthusiasm. "I wish big sister and brother Gu happiness for 10,000 years. Only when her silhouette had fully dissolved into the distance did he release a long, shuddering sigh. When he turned around, Halen and Mael were still paralyzed in disbelief. Fatty strode over and clapped Mael on the shoulder, his grin edged with pure mischief. "Instructor May, any interest in coming with Pangy to Central Prefecture?" Mael's refusal was a reflex. "None." "That's not up to you." Fatty didn't waste any more breath. He seized Halen and Mael, and with a violent eruption of Kai from his feet that blew a shallow crater into the dirt, he launched them into the sky. His laughter boomed with swollen pride. "Old Fa Tianji, Pangy is back, and I've brought you a grand gift." Murong River had been sitting with the stillness of a boulder, but the moment those 3 words hit his ears, he shot upright. "You want to go to Phoenix Perch Academy?" "Yes," Kael said, his brow furrowing slightly. "Is there a problem?" "How do you even know about Phoenix Perch Academy?" Murong River's brows tangled. "I'm certain I never mentioned it to you." His memory was sharp. Among the powers of the northern eastern wastelands, he had named only Jade Pinnacle Sect and the Murong family. "I met someone from there." "Met?" Murong River lifted an eyebrow. "That's quite the coincidence. You know what that place is like." "I know." Kael's confusion only deepened. That person was very thorough. They laid out all the forces of the eastern wastelands, including the one sect, 2 academies, and 3 great families of the north. Then, Murong River's face was unreadable, a mix of disbelief and something else. Even knowing all that, you still mean to go. Go, Kael's anticipation rose sharply. Senior, I think it suits me perfectly. Phoenix Perch Academy is thick with hidden dragons and crouching tigers. It will push my cultivation forward tremendously. Hidden dragons and crouching tigers, Murong River's expression twisted oddly. Asterisk, do you have some fundamental misunderstanding of those words? Asterisk. He paused, weighing his next words, and decided to press further. That Phoenix Perch Academy, but before he could finish, his expression shifted. The little girl's woken up. Inside the celestial chamber, Folly slowly pushed herself upright. Her eyes were unnervingly blank, with brief flashes of confusion drifting through them like smoke. Folly, Kael's chest tightened. This time, did you dream? A long silence stretched before Folly shook her head. This wasn't good. Kael's heart squeezed as though an iron hand had closed around it. The dusk-fallen spirit, Fruit's effects had fallen miserably short of what he'd hoped. He pulled out the 2 spirit herbs without pause. Folly, eat these quickly. Folly accepted them wordlessly. Her eyes reddened without warning. Young Master Manager lie, he's dead. It seemed that only now had the full weight of grief found her. Kael reached out and stroked her hair gently. Young Master already avenged Manager lie. Not one of the people who harmed him got away. Young Master, Folly's voice came low and rough. Am I truly so useless getting Manager lie killed, dragging you down too? It has nothing to do with you. Kael's tone stayed soft. Those people went too far. They're just like the Goo family, too arrogant, too unreasonable. Young Master, are there many unreasonable people in the world? Many. Then, what should we do? It doesn't matter. Kael smiled. Young Master will reason with them using his sword. Folly placed the spirit pill into her mouth, and a soft swallow sounded in her throat. The instant its medicinal power spread, a thread of chaotic black markings surfaced faintly between her brows, then sank back beneath her skin like a retreating serpent. She yawned over and over, her eyelids too heavy to fight. Young Master, I'm sleepy again. Sleep, Kael said quietly. When you wake, Young Master will take you somewhere the place that makes the best roast meat in the world. Roast meat. A weak spark flickered in Folly's eyes before slumber pulled her under. Outside? Kael stepped out with the sleeping Folly on his back. Murong River looked at him, his gaze complicated and layered. You've settled on it. Won't reconsider, truly? Kael smiled. Senior, could it be you're reluctant to see me go? Reluctant? Murong River sighed. Not exactly. It's just that the things you've done happen to fit my taste. Then, how about I don't leave, stay, and take over as shopkeeper? Murong River fell silent for a breath, then swept his hand outward in a broad, dismissive gesture. No farewell for you. The 2 exchanged a look and burst into laughter at the same moment. After getting the precise direction to Phoenix Perch Academy, Kael's expression sobered. Senior, until we meet again. I won't see you off. As Kael's figure faded beyond the end of Long Street, Murong River stood motionless for a long, long while. Go, he said at last, low and sudden. Follow him quietly. If danger finds him on the road, lend him all the strength you have. Yes. A ripple barely more than a shiver brushed the air. Several shades merged seamlessly with the shadows. Kayan Liu asked carefully, Shopkeeper, why would you? Shadow guards in the entire history of the Murong family, there had never been a precedent of an outsider receiving an escort. Kayan Liu, Murong River replied without directly answering. If Manager Lai's fate had fallen on you, could you, like Kael, knowing full well you'd die, still insist on avenging him? I couldn't. Kayan Liu shook his head, and few could. Exactly, I couldn't either, but he could, and he did. So this time, it has nothing to do with the old ancestor, nothing to do with the young lady, and even less to do with Prophet. I just want to be willful this once. 1,000 lie south of Great Kai's imperial city. Kael moved so fast his figure blurred to a remnant shadow. Spiritual energy wrapped around Folly as he sped forward. Once outside the city, he looked back at the sprawling walls behind him, his gaze heavy and thoughtful, then turned and plunged into the desolate wilderness without a backward glance. 2 days later, half the journey lay behind them. Young Master, a Folly's voice came faint and groggy from his back. Kael's heart surged. He quickly found a secluded spot and set her down, awake. Did you dream? No, Folly shook her head. Her spirit was a fraction better than before, but Kael felt the sharp prick of disappointment. This was still far from the bright liveliness she once carried. Young Master, where are we now? Kael opened his mouth to answer, but his expression wrenched violently instead. He shot upright, sweeping Folly behind him in a single motion. Folly flinched as well. In her memory, young master rarely showed such a face tense, guarded, and veiling a whisper of fear she could barely detect. Kael's voice was thick with vigilance, has come. The words had scarcely left his lips when a clamor barreled toward them from the distance. After her, don't let her get away. That little wretch is shameless. Once we catch her, we'll give her a lesson she won't forget. Another wail, shrill with panic and wet with tears, cut through the forest. Help. The wind shifted. A cloying sweetness slithered through the air, suffocating and wrong. Kael's soul force constricted on pure instinct. A needle of ice stabbed through the core of his mind. In the next heartbeat, a figure stumbled into the clearing. Her features were delicate, beautiful, but her tears streamed down like a devastated blossom in the rain. Brother Kael. The moment her eyes found him, she flung herself forward, weeping openly. I finally found you. Please, you have to save me. Miss Ione. Folly froze for an instant, confusion flickering across her face. She looks the same, and yet not like her at all. Steel hissed. Kael's long sword was in his hand, its edge flaring with a cold, star-bright light, the tip leveled at Ione's throat, the air screaming in its wake. His killing intent hit the clearing like a physical wave, pressing the grass and leaves flat against the dirt. Stop right there. Ione skidded to a halt, her face crumpling into a mask of heartbreak. What is the meaning of this, Brother Kael? Do you have any idea what I've endured to find you? Several figures caught up in that moment. The one in the lead was scrawny, with a face made for lechery, his cultivation a solid 9th layer of the origin-gathering realm. Run, where do you think you're running now? HMPH, daring to toy with our eldest brother Jiang, you must be tired of living. Heh, a pretty little thing like you, wandering around with such low cultivation. It's like you don't understand the dangers of the cultivation world at all. The men fanned out around Ione, their filth spilling into the air without a shred of restraint. Brother Kael. Ione's face was deathly pale, her eyes shimmering pools of hopeless despair. Please save me. The leader's gaze scraped over Kael. You, her little brother? I don't know her. Kael's voice was flat, devoid of all emotion. He lifted Folly onto his back and turned away. Whatever you intend to do has nothing to do with me. Folly, let's go. Ione's voice shook, as though a blade had been driven through her chest. Such a cruel heart. That little fatty said you've been waiting for your sister's sister, fought through countless dangers to find you, and this is how heartless you are. Fatty? Kael faltered mid-step, the veins on his forehead bulged. Chubby, you dare screw me over like this. Next time I see you, I'll split you apart. Enough of this chatter. The pursuing leader's patience had long since frayed to nothing. If you don't know her, then piss off. Don't stand in my way. One of the men behind him let his eyes crawl over Folly. He leaned in close and whispered, eldest brother Jiang, that little lass, she seems to have some charm too. The leader's eyes cut over. They lit up. Not bad at all. A real beauty in the making at such a young age. TCH, he jabbed a finger at Kael, a savage grin splitting his face. In that case, you don't need to leave either. Kael stopped walking. His gaze settled on Ione, utterly unreadable. All of this, you planned it? Brother! Ione's eyes glistened with fresh tears. How can you wrong your sister so? It was they who were driven by lust, seeking to do evil. Sister fled all the way here, your words cut too deeply. Tears fell in earnest streams. Ha ha ha, the leader's laughter rang out, thick with savage delight. One great beauty and one little beauty. Today, I've struck it rich. Boy, his eyes sharpened with murderous intent. If you want to live, drop the girl and crawl away. Without a word, Kael gently set Folly down on her feet. The leader grew even more arrogant. Now that's a sensible. TCH. The word never finished. A streak of white light carved a path before his eyes. The dragon's roar had not yet faded when steel kissed the sheath once more. A dozen lines of blood bloomed simultaneously across the throats of the group. Their bodies hit the ground with muffled, heavy thuds. On each forehead lay a half-inch sword scar, clean and precise. Only then did the red begin to spread, pooling into the dirt. Brother Kael. Ione's eyes brightened with startling intensity. You're so formidable. Is that so? Kael smiled. His voice was glacier, flat. Why don't you give it a try too? The words fell, and 12 streaks of prime arrival sword Kai screamed from his blade. They tore 12 vacuum trails through the empty air and punched directly through Ione's vital points. Her form wavered. A faint, dark ripple spread out from where she stood, as if space itself had folded gently inward, bending around her. The sword Kai passed through nothing and thundered on, bisecting several ancient trees behind her at the waist. Splinters erupted in a violent cloud. "Little brother," Ione said, patting her chest with a slightly pale face, "you are so cruel." Folly watched Ione patting her chest. She looked down at herself. A sharp, sudden jealousy flared in her eyes. Kael was not surprised his sword Kai had missed. This woman was too bizarre. Her cultivation was only at the aperture, opening realm, yet her methods were utterly unfathomable. "Speak." His voice dropped low and cold. "What exactly do you want?" "Little brother," Ione approached with graceful, fluid steps, her expression one of deep grievance. "You're so heartless." "Not saying, then I'm leaving." Ione froze. Then she threw her head back and laughed, a wild, shaking thing that made her sway like a flowering branch caught in a gale. Beside her, Folly's jealousy deepened into a simmering rage. The laughter cut off as suddenly as it began. Ione fixed Kael with a stare that had turned dark and drunk with obsession. "From the moment I first saw you, little brother Kael, I knew you were no ordinary boy. That light inside your mind, the one that hurt me, what was it? Why is your soul force so powerful, and why," she drew in a long, savoring breath, her tongue wetting her lips, "why does it smell so delicious? So delicious, I just want to eat you all up." A cold understanding settled in Kael's gut. His soul force was monstrously strong because he had absorbed Malvorn. And Mordain had stood at the pinnacle of the demonic path. Even the faintest whisper of that aura would be a fatal lure to any demonic cultivator who crossed his path. So, Ione giggled, her voice dropping into a honeyed, intimate register. "Let your big sister breathe in your scent once more, or tell big sister your secret." "If you promise, big sister will do anything you ask." A deep, rosy flush rose to her cheeks. Her chest heaved in a way that was far from controlled. "Even if you wanted to do certain things, everything can be discussed." Kael had yet to speak when Folly detonated. Never in her entire life had she been so furious. "Shameless, seducing my young master. Bah!" "Little sister," Ione deliberately thrust out her chest, her gaze dripping with condescension. "No wonder you're so jealous of big sister. After all, you're still far too small." The double entendre stabbed deep. Folly ignited like an enraged lion cub, her eyes locked on Ione with blazing intensity. "You stinking woman, shameless, too shameless." Kael was speechless. Since when was Folly, who was supposed to be slow-witted, so quick to catch such a remark? Wait, how had he understood it so easily himself? Ione looked utterly pleased with herself. What's wrong? Jealous of big sister's assets, something you could never be envious enough to have. Ah, Folly lost all control. The suppressed power locked inside her tiny body erupted, her spiritual energy churned and boiled. Loose gravel on the ground began to buzz and vibrate with the sheer pressure she leaked. "I'll stare you to death." Folly, Kael's blood ran cold. Calm down right now. If she truly unleashed that stare, it was anyone's guess whether Ione would survive. Folly herself most certainly would not. "Young master, don't stop me. I'm going to stare her to death today." "Little brother Kael," Ione remarked, entirely unafraid. "Just now it seemed your eyes might have wandered somewhere they shouldn't." Folly fell instantly silent. "Folly, don't listen to her nonsense," Kael said, his head pounding violently. "So what do you say?" Ione's voice dripped with honeyed temptation. Her snow-white dress billowed gently in the wind, making her look all the more charming and piteously fragile. "Why not come a bit closer? Big sister will let you have a much closer look." Kael breathed out a long, slow stream of turbid air. "Ione, or whoever you really are, it doesn't matter. I won't agree to either of your conditions. If you want to fight, then fight. Spare me these cheap, low tricks." He raised his sword again, leveling it at her form. A single condensed thread of killing intent locked onto Ione, absolute and unwavering. "Little brother Kael," Ione wobbled as if she might shatter, her voice on the verge of tears. "Does big sister really disgust you so much?" "Yes, Ione's expression shifted. A smile that was not quite a smile curled her lips. "Then what if big sister says she absolutely won't let you leave today? Will you kill big sister?" A 3-foot gleam of cold light extended from the tip of his sword. Kael's face might as well have been cast from iron. "Come, you're welcome to try." "Cruel one," Ione sighed mournfully. "Big sister finally found you. How could she possibly let you go now? Just be obedient, and I promise it won't hurt too much." She advanced step by step. Barely a few zhangs separated them now. Kael felt as if he were facing a great and terrible foe. Then it happened. Swish! 6 figures burst from the earth itself. They rose like solid pillars of ink, instantly snapping into a lethal, encircling formation. A canopy of cold, murderous intent descended upon the clearing. "Shadow guards!" Kael blinked in sheer surprise. How are you here?" The black-clad leader clasped his fist in salute. Dark 16, on orders from the shopkeeper, to escort you on your journey forward. A sudden warmth surged in Kael's chest. He gave a solemn nod. The senior's thoughtfulness runs deep. I will not forget this kindness. Oh my, Ione looked at the 6 men, her expression a parody of panic. How truly formidable, several spirit-severing realm experts. Big sister is so very scared. HMPH, Folly brandished a tiny fist. Now you're scared, too late. Ione said nothing. She merely cast a single contemptuous glance at Folly's upper body. Folly's blood surged all over again. Nearby, the 6 shadow guards stood utterly expressionless, waiting only for Kael's command. Little brother Kael, Ione gazed at him with deep, cloying affection. Even with so many helpers, Big Sister still doesn't want to let you go. What to do? Kael's face remained an expressionless mask. Then you can stay. The instant the words left his mouth, the group of shadow guards flickered into ghost-like motion, surrounding Ione in a ring of cold steel and colder intent. You don't really think, Ione sighed softly, her eyes liquid with unreadable emotion, that by relying on them alone, you can stop Big Sister, do you? A cold fist of dread seized Kael's heart. Oh no, on that Demoness's face, there was not a single trace of genuine fear or panic, only a predator's serene confidence. She had a trump card. I attack. Killing intent poured from his words. Kael's longsword lashed out in a horizontal arc, and a blade, light steeped in murder, flared, punching clean through Ione's chest, boring a hole the size of a fist. The strike never slowed. It screamed into the distance and vanished. Ione glanced down at the wound gaping in her chest, lips trembling, eyes rimmed with tears that wouldn't fall. Little brother Kael, you've got no conscience at all? Mid-sentence, the dark light in her eyes surged. In an eye blink, that black luminance swept across everyone present like a silent tide. The air thickened into a clinging mire. Lifting an arm felt like hauling 1,000, Jin weight. Spiritual energy seized up inside their meridians, each channel a frozen stream. Their skin grayed to a decayed pallor. Movements slowed until they seemed nailed in place. Little brother, Ione's stare locked on Kael, greed sparking in her gaze. Don't worry, Big Sister swears she won't hurt. Her expression shattered. From the distance, a tyrannical pressure barreled toward them with mounting, crushing force. You dare harm my son. Thuron's roar tore through the sky, drenched in killing intent. I'll kill you. Boom! Before the man himself arrived, a sky-surging wave of demonic Kai had already coalesced into a tangible black tide, crashing down from above. For dozens of Zhang in every direction, vegetation withered and rotted in an instant. Black waves churned upward, shaping a ferocious demon, head phantom behind him, its silent howl pressing down like a weight. True demon, Ione stared at that demonic Kai, every shred of her composure splintering into raw, disbelieving panic. How is this possible? Bang! A domineering figure slammed into the earth, shaking it so violently that several shadow guards were hurled off their feet. Home, Folly froze. Foster father, you're still alive. She clutched Kael's sleeve, joy spilling over her face. Young master, you saw. Foster father, he's alive. She'd slept through these last days. Kael hadn't yet found the moment to tell her Thuron lived. Thuron's form halted. Slowly, as if battling a tide inside himself, he turned his head. The devouring pure black in his eyes receded a fraction. Folly. It's me. Folly wept a smile. I'm Folly, foster father. Folly, tenderness, rare as a ghost, surfaced in Thuron's gaze. Good. Impossible. Ione's core quaked. How can a true demon still walk this world and keep its mind even less so? Die? Thuron's head snapped back. His eyes swallowed themselves in twin pools of pure black once more, and demonic Kai churned skyward around him. He struck down with his palm. The air tore with a muffled boom like ripping canvas. Goom! The earth collapsed outward into a pit over 10 zhang deep, its ragged rim seeping black smoke like molten rock. Under that palm, Ione's form dissolved, leaving only a fading shriek and a twisted black afterimage that fled without a trace. Kill. Thuron's senses for demonic Kai reached farther than any ordinary man's. He knew she still lived. An avalanche of murderous intent swept through him. Demonic Kai lifted him aloft, and he shot off as a streak of black light, pursuit blazing hard behind him. Young master, a Folly stared blankly at Kael, foster father so strong. Yeah, with Thuron revealed, Kael's heart finally settled. He had seen it clearly. Ione feared him to the marrow. The same fear Zhengning had worn that day, not of cultivation might, but of something deeper. Asterisk the Great Freedom Demon Sutra. Asterisk the realization struck like lightning. This ultimate art, the direct path to the boundless demonic way, seemed born to suppress creatures like her. Wonderful. Folly clenched both fists. Foster father, don't let her get away. That shameless woman, always trying to seduce young master. The shadow guards reassembled. Thuron hadn't aimed at them, but the sheer tyranny of his demonic Kai had hammered them bloody inside. Everyone, Kael's expression was heavy with apology. About this, my apologies. Inwardly, he sighed. Asterisk foster father's temper, there's really no reining it in. Asterisk, no need. Shadow 16 shook his head. It was our duty. Here, Kael drew several bottles of spirit pills from his storage ring. Dr. Zoo's work. Excellent for healing, take them quickly. Don't let your injuries fester. A ripple passed through Shadow 16's eyes. His fingers curled, then loosened. He'd meant to throw down a stiff refusal. His throat bobbed, but in the end, he only offered a rigid cupped fist salute. Fine. Asterisk shadow guards. Asterisk in plain words, death warriors bred by the Murong family. Few ever cared if they lived or died, let alone someone like Kael, who'd hand over even Dr. Zoo's spirit pills to tend their wounds. The moment he took them, Shadow 16 understood why Murong River had broken clan rules to force them onto this road. Sir, he saluted again, tone still cold, but now threaded with the thinnest strand of gratitude. Please, continue. From here on, we will follow. A light wave of his hand, and the shadow guards flickered from sight. Young master, Folly's eyes still clung to the direction Thuron had vanished. Foster father really is alive. Yeah, Kael smiled, and with a few brief words, told her how he'd met Thuron in the Wildwood. That's so good. Folly suddenly laughed. Kael ruffled her head with an indulgent hand. Yeah, so good. The two people he cared for most, both alive. That thought wounded his determination to heal her one turn tighter. Let's go too. Where to? To eat grilled meat. Young master knows a cook. Best grilled meat under heaven. Oh, for once, Folly showed no interest. Silence stretched between them. Then she asked a strange question. Was she pretty? What? Kael didn't follow. That woman, Folly's small face was utterly serious. She wasn't wrong. You really did sneak a look where you shouldn't. I saw it clear as day. Don't talk nonsense. Kael's old face burned, he swore. One glance, barely that, and truly by accident. Ah, Folly sighed, head drooping. Ah, another sigh heavier, as soon as her chin dipped. Silly girl. Kael's big hand flattened her hair. What are you brooding over? Young master. Folly lifted her face, dead serious. I've decided. Kael's heart tightened. Decided what? In his memory, Folly rarely wore that expression. I'm going to grow up fast. For the first time, a solid, sinking bloom of crisis took root inside the girl who'd drifted through 40-odd years. Kael's temple veins throbbed. He swore a dark oath. If that Demoness slipped Thuron's grasp, the next time he saw her, he'd carve her into 8 pieces. Go, face black. He hoisted Folly onto his back, and his form blurred as he shot ahead. 2 days slipped by in a haze. Kael arrived in the region where Feng, Wu Ione was said to be, but staring at the ever more desolate landscape, he halted, face a blank map of confusion. Asterisk, this can't be right. Lost again, no. This time I followed Manager Murong's route exactly. Could Manager Murong have played me? Also no, asterisk. He tossed the thought aside. Young master, Folly poked her head out. What's wrong? I think Kael's face had soured. I've been screwed over again. Far ahead, a distant echo of bickering brushed his ears. Go! Gritting his teeth, he raced toward the noise. Moments later, he halted, and the sight before him gutted every thought inside his head. A barren low hill, dead vines threading through shattered rock, 2 thatched huts leaned against the slope, old wood creaking faint and plaintive when the wind swept through. The spiritual energy ran thicker than outside, but each breath scraped the throat with a sharp, metallic strangeness that made Kael frown. 20 or 30 young people stood rooted at the hill's foot, faces blank. Kael stood among them. Opposite, a tower of a man, 10 feet tall and built like black iron, grinned with a simple, faced warmth. The bone, filleting dagger at his hip, caught the light now and then, its cold gleam weaving a wordless contradiction with his sun, darkened smile. Everyone, the man said, his voice thick with satisfaction, welcome to the entrance trial for my Feng, Wu Ione. Though each of you is exceptionally gifted and deeply rooted in your foundations, the process, well, it cannot be skipped. From within the crowd, a young man hesitantly spoke. Is this place truly the Feng, Wu Ione? Of course. The man bent down, rummaged through the weeds with his large hands, and hoisted up a stone tablet broken off by a third. Soil pattered down. Amid the mottled moss, 3 bold, sweeping characters stood revealed. Asterisk Feng, Wu Ione, asterisk. Kael's gaze landed on them, and his heart went utterly cold. He had been cheated. Everyone else stood dumbstruck before that fractured tablet. Then, the young man's face had already paled. This must be the outer court of the Fung, Wu Ione, right? It has to be. Exactly. Maybe once we pass the trial, we'll get to see the true inner court. That makes sense. That makes sense. A whole crowd desperately filled in the blanks, and even Kael subconsciously let out a breath of relief. An outer court, definitely an outer court. The man waved a hand. My Fung. Wu Ione has never had any division between inner and outer court. The hope that had just risen inside them all shattered cleanly. Taking in their expressions, the man shook his head. One must not judge things only by their surface. Though my Fung, Wu Ione may look somewhat run, down on the outside, its true heritage. Hold on. Kael's eyes suddenly bulged. Weren't you a cook? How did you become the second senior brother? I am a cook. The man gave him a friendly grin, as if he still remembered him. I also hold the concurrent post of second senior brother. Kael's heart went thoroughly cold. Then how many people are there in Fung, Wu Ione in total? The man held up 3 fingers. 30. Someone frowned deeply. That's far too few. 3. The crowd erupted. 3 people, and you dare call yourselves a sect? I traveled day and night for half a month, and this is the farce you lure me into. Let's go, let's go. I wouldn't waste another heartbeat in this dump. Kael's face darkened like the bottom of a scorched pot. He grabbed Folly's wrist and pivoted to leave. This was one of the 2 great academies. It didn't even measure up to the great Kai Martial Academy's latrine. The swarthy man stiffened, anxiety creeping into his voice. Don't walk away. The position of head disciple is still open. That only made the crowd move faster. A sect of 3, head disciple. What weight did that title even carry? Kael finally understood the strange, pitying look Murong River had given him. This wasn't just a dead end. This was a fire pit lined with spikes. The man sighed, a long breath of defeat. Ah, well, seeing as you're already here. Kael's steps froze. He was already here. Walking away now would mean every day of frantic travel had been for nothing. Worse, he'd nearly been capsized by that Demoness. No matter how he turned it in his mind, leaving like this sat like swallowing a stone. Most of the others stopped too. They had no path back, just like him. The few who still had options had long since slipped away without a trace. Those who stayed muttered desperate comforts under their breaths. Forget it, we're here now. At least Fung, Wu Ione, is still one of the 2 academies. With our strength, stepping through their door is an honor to them. The swarthy man's face split into a wide grin, keeping even this many exceeded every expectation. Choosing Fung, Wu Ione, you lot have sharp eyes. A dozen glares skewered him. Asterisk choose asterisk. They hadn't chosen anything. Stop dragging it out. Someone called impatiently. Just get that so-called trial started already. Fair point. The man nodded. Best hurry. I've got to head back and cook later. Silence. The man was a cook through and through. Folly rubbed her belly and whispered, Young master, I'm hungry. Kael stroked her hair, his gaze settling on the swarthy man with something far from friendly. Wait just a bit longer. Soon you can eat as much roast meat as your stomach can hold. The man paid no mind to the crowd's reactions. With a flick of his wrist, he withdrew a mystic jade from his storage ring. It sat in his palm, pure white and flawless, halos of light shifting across its surface like flowing water. A heavenly phoenix was carved into the top, its 9-tailed feathers so impossibly fine that each one seemed to breathe faint trails of light. The temperature rose by a few degrees the moment it appeared. One glance and the phoenix looked ready to tear free from the stone and take flight. The man's expression sobered. The trial officially begins. The task is simple. Inject your spiritual energy into the mystic jade. He exhaled a thread of spiritual energy. On one of the phoenix feathers, a trace of crimson bled into view. Light 6 tail feathers, and you pass. Teeth sucked air all around. Even the trial was half-baked. Who goes first? The man didn't care. Me, the young man who had spoken first before, stepped forward, hostility rippling off him. He plucked the jade from the man's hand, flipped it over twice with clear disregard. Guys! Spiritual energy flooded in, but the jade merely trembled softly, then fell still uniformly white. The crowd exchanged glances. The young man's composure shattered. Teeth gritted, he detonated his full cultivation at Origin Gathering Realm, 3rd tier. His aura surged outward, and spiritual energy roared into the jade again. This time, the mystic jade responded. A thread of crimson crawled up from the bottom, creeping slowly onto the first tail feather. When it had barely covered half of the second, it began to stutter, quivering, writhing like a living thing, unable to push further. The young man's face turned scarlet, veins bulging on his forehead. He had reached his absolute limit. And at that very moment, the crimson began to retreat, fading away. The jade let out a long, mournful cry, and its light died utterly silent. The man shook his head, disappointment flickering deep in his eyes. The young man's cultivation was impressive. I stand out among the dozen gathered here, yet the jade reverted to blank white in an eye blink. His face burned, half from exertion, half from shame. Unable to swallow the humiliation, he raised the jade, ready to smash it to the ground. The swarthy man's face twisted. He snatched it back with a chopping motion, his tone hard. That treasure anchors Feng, Wu Ione. If you break it, you can't shoulder the consequences. Disqualified, the young man's eyes bulged with fury. He spat curses, garbage trial. No wonder there are no disciples, then fell silent, shame and anger strangling his words. The swarthy man ignored him and cast his gaze across the crowd. Anyone else? Another challenger stepped forward, origin gathering realm, 4th layer, a cultivation higher than the last. The result, however, crushed all expectations. Even straining every fiber of his being, he only managed to light the first plume. The second remained stubbornly dead. The earlier challenger immediately shut his mouth, a sense of balance restored. Kael observed his thoughts churning. He'd already caught the trick. This trial weighed innate potential, not cultivation depth. The swarthy man's face deepened with disappointment. He asked again. The crowd's enthusiasm remained undimmed. Everyone wanted to slap this so-called cook's smug face. One after another, over a dozen people stepped up, only to have the mystic jade slap their own faces until they rang. The best among them lit a mere 3 plumes. Dejection, shame, and bitter frustration seeped through the crowd. The swarthy man's disappointment mirrored theirs, his gaze idly drifting until it landed on Kael. Forcing energy into his voice, he asked, "Little brother, care to give it a try?" He could tell Kael was no ordinary man, but he held little hope. No one knew better than him how brutal it was to light 6 plumes. Every gaze converged, then heads shook in private. Kael's cultivation hadn't even reached Kai convergence realm. He was doomed. "Young master, try it. You can definitely do it." Folly lifted her small face. Kael hesitated. After learning what Feng, Wu Iwen truly was, most of his interest had already drained away. Folly tugged his sleeve. "We're already here." Those words rattled him again. Leaving without trying felt like swallowing a loss. Besides, he still planned to mooch some roast meat. He owed the host a little face. Reluctantly, he accepted the mystic jade. The swarthy man offered perfunctory encouragement, put some muscle into it. Before the words even finished, liquid spiritual force poured into the jade. In nearly the same instant, the first phoenix plume spread into blazing crimson, at a speed the eye could scarcely follow. Then the second, the third. The air shivered, as if something had been violently awakened. The crowd stared, mouths slack. The swarthy man's eyes bulged. His voice shook. "Quick, put your back into it." Kael considered. "Then I'll go all out." "You haven't gone all out yet. All out? Let me see your limit." Boom! Kael's aura erupted. Fine sand lifted from the ground. Robes snapped wildly. The ambient spiritual energy churned as an invisible whirlwind roared up from flat earth. Over a dozen people nearly got flung off their feet. When they steadied themselves to look at the mystic jade again, they froze in utter stupor. All 9 phoenix plumes blazed with light. The celestial phoenix itself had turned crimson as blood, more alive, more numinous than before, as if it would beat its wings and soar at any heartbeat. A blood-red luminescence swirled deep within the jade, like magma surging through hidden veins. As Kael's aura climbed higher, that crimson grew so intense it seemed ready to drip. Asterisk crack asterisk. A crisp sound, barely a whisper, cut through the sudden stillness. A fracture finer than a hair crept silently across the mystic jade's surface. Deathly silence. Kael's face went stiff. He put a little too much force into it. The swarthy man stared at the jade, snatched it into his own hands, and glared at that crack. His fingers trembled faintly. Kael edged backward. Folly grabbed his sleeve and whispered, "He did say earlier it's the treasure that anchors the sect. We can't afford to pay for it." Kael forced calm into his voice. "He might have said that, yes. Let's skip the roast meat and just run." Asterisk run. Asterisk Kael grasped the urgency. He had to run, and fast. Halt! The swarthy man's head snapped up, his gaze locking onto Kael with razor focus. A fierce aura instantly swallowed the clearing. "What do you think you're doing?" Kael's heart jolted. He shoved Folly behind him. "You can't pin this on me. This mystic jade is too flimsy to handle any real strain, and you were the one who ordered me to go all out. Before the trial, you never said a word about paying for damages. You bear full responsibility." The onlookers squirmed, faces burning with second-hand shame so sharp they wished the ground would swallow them whole. Asterisk too flimsy. Asterisk that was outright mockery. The burly man stared, momentarily at a loss for words. Since when did I say I wanted you to pay? Folly peeked out, half her face visible, and mumbled without conviction, just a moment ago. You said this was the treasure that anchors your sect. The burly man erupted in booming laughter. Quick as lightning, he clapped a hand on Kael's shoulder, his dark face alight with fervent excitement. You asterisk are the treasure that anchors our sect. Little junior brother, from this day forward, you are the head disciple of my Feng, Wu Ione. A gleam entered Kael's eyes, so we don't have to pay. No need, the burly man waved a dismissive hand. The mystic jade was always meant for the trial. Finding the right person is what matters, whether it shatters is irrelevant. You're my junior brother now. Even if you tear Feng, Wu Iwane apart, I won't breathe a word of blame. Kael's gaze drifted around the crumbling courtyard. Was there truly any difference between tearing it apart and leaving it as it was? One of the onlookers finally found his voice. What about us? The burly man shook his head, genuine regret settling on his face. You failed the trial. I'm sorry. But I won't send you away with nothing. From his storage ring, he produced a dozen strips of jerky and passed them out one by one. The failed examinees clutched their jerky, faces a tangle of emotions as they drifted away. Kael's mouth twitched. Folly, on the other hand, stared at the jerky, with drool practically spilling from her lips. Take it without explanation. The burly man shoved the remaining strips into their hands. You came all this way. I can't let you leave empty-handed. The departing crowd wore strained expressions. Accepting felt vaguely shameful. Refusing meant the whole trip had been for nothing. They had all tasted the burly man's roasted beast meat. They knew full well that such an ordinary-looking strip of jerky held a terrifying density of spiritual power. After a brief hesitation, they shot Kael complicated glances, then turned and left in silence. The jerky in their hands swayed gently in the breeze, a strangely poignant sight. Little junior brother. The instant the crowd vanished, the burly man fixed his eyes on Kael, his face brimming with satisfaction and excitement. Come, follow me up the mountain. Time to meet your third senior sister. Hold on, Kael managed a single word. In the next breath, the burly man's spiritual energy coiled outward, sweeping Kael and Folly up the mountainside in a blur. They landed before two thatched huts, halfway up the slope. Junior sister, I found one. Ha ha ha, after all these years, I've finally found one. The joy in his voice no longer held any restraint. Is that so? Came a warm, gentle reply. A woman in a yellow dress, graceful, softly beautiful, emerged unhurriedly from one of the huts. A forlorn lady. In her left hand, a half-cut piece of cloth. In her right, a glittering jade needle. Kael's eyes went wide. Asterisk a seamstress. Really? Asterisk a silent sigh wailed through him. A cook, a seamstress. This Feng Wu Iwane had absolutely no credibility whatsoever. Is it him? The forlorn lady studied Kael with curiosity. It's him. The burly man opened his palm, excitement spilling over. Junior sister, look. This, her gaze sharpened, and awe bloomed on her face. Shattered. Senior brother, this time you've truly picked up a treasure. Heh, the burly man scratched his head, his expression almost humble. Just luck, sheer luck. Asterisk picked up. Asterisk Kael's expression darkened. Asterisk the word you're looking for is conned. Asterisk. Little girl, the forlorn lady offered Folly a soft smile. What's your name? My name is Folly. Folly, she smiled, lovely. Such pure spiritual power at such a young age. Rare indeed. Come. The burly man pulled Kael forward, enthusiasm brimming. This is your third senior sister, Yu Miao. I'm your second senior brother, Zuo Yong. From now on, we're one family. Asterisk one family. Asterisk Kael's face slackened, speechless. This was far too warm, far too fast. You two. He began, thinking it best to set things straight. Actually, second senior brother. Before he could finish, Yu Miao smoothly cut him off. Little junior brother just arrived today. You must give him a proper welcome. Right. Zuo Yong smacked his forehead. Got so caught up in the trial, I nearly forgot the real business. Little junior brother, wait here. Your senior brother's going to show you something special today. Under Kael's frozen stare, Zuo Yong strode into the other hut and hauled out a giant black wok. Asterisk pat, asterisk with a flick of his finger, a cluster of spiritual flame blazed to life beneath it. Emerald, green flames danced like a host of sprites, licking up the wok's sides, heat instantly twisting the air into transparent ripples. Kael was utterly speechless. This asterisk was real business. Actually, he tried again. Eating is the greatest business under heaven. Zuo Yong waved him off. Eat first, talk later. As he spoke, he retrieved clear spiritual spring water from his storage ring, then grabbed jerky strips, spiritual fruits, herbs, and a variety of unidentifiable powders, dumping everything into the wok. In that instant, a rich, strange aroma wafted out. The fragrance seemed to solidify, transforming into a warm tidal wave of spiritual energy the moment it entered the nostrils. It pulsed gently against the walls of the meridians, sending a numbing shiver through every bone and limb. Kael felt his internal spiritual power surge into frantic motion. An impulse he had long forgotten, the urge to break through, erupted with tidal force. Oh, Yu Miao glanced at him. Is little junior brother about to break through? Kael could no longer respond. The urge intensified, a relentless pressure. He yielded to its momentum, sat cross-legged, sank his consciousness into stillness, and guided his spiritual power inward to converge. Kai, convergence realm, the unity of all essences, gather the spiritual power from meridians and acupoints to carve a spiritual pool at the brow. The deeper the power, the wider the pool. Ordinary cultivators, lacking an extreme realm foundation, would exhaust themselves just to open a pool of 10 zhang. Kael was different. Kai condensation extreme realm, acupoint opening extreme realm, both perfected, his spiritual pool would be of a scale unheard of. Fierce eagerness lit within him. Where did his limit truly lie? Asterisk, rumble, asterisk. The spiritual power in his meridians churned to its utmost. As it roared through, a resonant hum deepened like rivers thundering with a low, sonorous rumble. That sound even leaked outside his body, faintly echoing before the huts. Second senior brother, Yu Miao grew more astounded by the moment. This caliber of presence, little junior brother, is truly remarkable. Isn't he just? Zhuo Yong's face filled with heartfelt emotion. Earlier, I was completely dumbstruck. In all the eastern wastelands, apart from that one place, no, even that place might not produce someone with a deeper foundation. Junior sister, you were right. This time, we've truly picked up a treasure. When eldest senior sister returns, we can finally give her an answer. They exchanged a glance, hearts in perfect accord. No matter what, they absolutely could not let such talent slip away. Beside them, Folly hadn't caught a word. Drool practically streamed from her mouth. Her eyes were glued to that giant black walk, unblinking, utterly entranced. Kael, wholly focused on his breakthrough, couldn't hear their conversation either. With his will, he guided the raging spiritual power and rammed it fiercely toward his brow. Carving a spiritual pool was far simpler than shattering acupoint barriers. Asterisk crack, asterisk, a soft sound. At his brow, a spiritual pool roughly a zhang across, suspended between the tangible and intangible, split open in an instant. Asterisk boom, rumble asterisk. The raging power inside him, finding a breach, surged in madly. 10 zhang, 30, 50 in a breath. The pool was forcibly expanded to 90 zhang across. 90 zhang, a figure that would shame countless so-called geniuses. But for Kael, it wasn't over. Asterisk boom, asterisk. Guided by his will, the last of his spiritual energy poured in. In that instant, the pool swelled violently to 100 zhang. 100 zhang, the absolute limit. Since the dawn of time, aside from a rare handful blessed by heaven, virtually no one had carved such a pool. The spiritual pool hovered at Kaelan's brow, impossibly close to the plane of consciousness. The dull, muffled rumble of his breakthrough vibrated through the void, and the shade felt it. Break broke through. The creature craned his head upward, staring rigidly into the dark expanse above. From the ceiling of the consciousness space, a faint thread of golden light seeped through, illuminating the despair-avaged face huddled in a corner. Isn't he about to die? These past days had been draw, now torture. The shade had been waiting all along for Kaelan to breathe his last, to seize that instant and escape. He'd even crafted a meticulous plan to grow stronger afterward, precisely to forestall any further misfortune. Everything had been perfectly aligned, only awaiting Kaelan's death. Yet he waited, and the bastard simply refused to die. Anxious and uneasy, he dared not ask, much less prod. He could only pray in silence. And then Kaelan delivered a heaven-shattering surprise. Not only did he not die, he broke through. Little bastard, the shade's spirit utterly crumbled. Curled up in the corner, he ground out a despairing whimper through clenched teeth. Are you fucking dying or not? The shade had no way of knowing that, in this moment, Kaelan had long since forgotten him. Selectively forgotten, of course. At Kaelan's brow, 100 zhang spiritual pool flickered in and out of visibility, hazy currents of energy swirling around it like something carved from transparent mystic crystal. At the pool's bottom, a shallow layer of spiritual liquid had already settled. The liquid's surface had just stilled when a single dewdrop of spiritual essence plummeted from the void, striking the surface and soundlessly spreading an impossibly fine ripple. Origin, gathering realm, first layer. What came next was a methodical process. Fill the pool completely, then ride that momentum to break into spiritual profound. Yet without external medicinal aids, relying solely on himself to fill 100 Zhang's spiritual pool, that would likely be several times harder than completing acupoint opening to perfection. He exhaled a soft breath of turbid air. His mind snapped back to his surroundings as voices drifted into his ears. Junior sister, you eat a little less. Zhuo Yang's voice was deep and strained, clearly pained. Second senior brother, just one more piece, just one. Yu Miao's mouth was stuffed full, her voice muffled, tinged with grievance and a hint of irrepressible embarrassment. Kael opened his eyes, the corner of his mouth twitched violently. Before that giant black walk, Zhuo Yang watched the spiritual food vanishing from the pot at high speed, his face practically crumpled into a knot. Yu Miao had long since shed any pretense of a graceful lady. She clutched a piece of beast meat, gnawing until her lips gleamed with grease. Folly had buried her entire little face under a slab of beast meat, her expression utterly invisible. In that short span, the spiritual power dissolving from the meat had already shoved her cultivation into the 5th layer of acupoint opening, and it was still climbing. Young master, noticing Kael was awake, Folly didn't even lift her head, her voice completely indistinct. Hurry and eat, it's too delicious. Indeed, Yu Miao chimed in, nodding repeatedly, her hand involuntarily reaching into the pot again. If it weren't for your new entry today, second senior brother normally wouldn't be willing to cook all this. Junior sister, Zhuo Yang finally snapped, you'd leave some for little junior brother. Kael swept a glance into the wok, hissed there really wasn't much meat left. Without a second word, he dove straight into the fray. If he didn't start eating now, there'd be nothing left but soup. We're here anyway. If he didn't eat until he got his fill, how could it be worth the days of travel? Moments later, the 3 of them had cleared out the pot like a whirlwind, not even a trace of soup left behind. Delicious. Folly licked her fingers, utterly reluctant to stop. By now, her cultivation had solidly broken into the 5th layer of acupoint opening, matching what others would take years of bitter training to achieve. Kael, though he ate the least, had also reached the peak of origin gathering realm's 1st layer, just a half step from breaking through. You too, he said, fully satisfied and unusually refreshed through and through. Thank you for the feast. Don't be so polite. Zhuo Yang waved his hand, an honest smile filling his dark face. We're family, no need for formal talk. Coughed, Kael abruptly felt a little embarrassed. I've decided I still won't join Feng, Wu Iwen. The moment those words landed, the atmosphere chilled completely. The smile on Zhuo Yang's face faded, bit by bit. Yu Miao still wore her gentle and mild expression, but her gaze grew somewhat dangerous. Folly instinctively sensed something off and quietly slipped back to Kaelan's side. Little junior brother, Zhuo Yang's eyes fixed on him, carrying an unsettling glint. Do you have any idea how much effort your senior brother poured into this pot of beast meat? You wouldn't be thinking of eating and running, would you? Didn't I already say thanks? Kaelan's face was utterly unamused. He pointed at Yu Miao. Besides, she ate even more than I did. The atmosphere froze over once more. Forget it, Yu Miao suddenly spoke, her tone light and casual. Our Feng, Wu Iwen is not an unreasonable place. If you're set on leaving, you may. It's just that mystic jade you shattered, you have to pay for it. Huh, Folly was completely baffled. Didn't you say we didn't have to pay? Yes, Zhuo Yang said flatly, our Feng, Wu Iwen may be small, but it has its rules. If it's our own little junior brother who broke it, then shattering it means nothing. But if it's an outsider breaking our sect's anchor treasure and not paying compensation, once that spreads, wouldn't Feng, Wu Iwen become a laughingstock? Kaelan's mouth twitched. Feng, Wu Iwen was already this rundown, and they were still scared of being laughed at. From first to last, he had never spoken a word agreeing to join Feng, Wu Iwen. That trial wasn't even something he'd actively wanted to try. He had come here originally aiming for the position of head disciple, only to discover upon arrival that the head disciple probably carried less clout than a random ordinary Love Jade Pinnacle sect, completely useless toward buying that pill. Naturally, he wouldn't stay, even if, admittedly, he did genuinely like the atmosphere in this courtyard. It's fine, Zhuo Yang waved his hand, appearing utterly indifferent. Stay or go, you decide for yourself. As he spoke, his hand drifted seemingly without intention onto his waist, gently stroking the hilt of his knife. Coarse, knuckled fingers caressed it once, then again. Kaelan's eyelid twitched fiercely. That mystic jade, Folly's voice, was as weak as a mosquito's whine. How much is it worth? Not much, Yu Miao smiled, gentle and soft, thoroughly chilling. Just a few million spirit source, give or take. A few million, Folly blinked, her mind completely unable to process those numbers. Kaelan's heart dropped into ice water. He heard perfectly clearly. It was spirit source, not origin crystal. You two are outright extorting me. Heh heh, Zuo-yong had already pulled that sharp knife from his waist. With a flip of his wrist, he spun it cleanly in a practiced flourish, his dark face slathered in an honest, well-placed smile. Whether you pay or not is your call. We won't force you. Kaelan sucked air through his teeth. The knives are already out, and that's not forcing. He saw it clearly now. He wasn't getting out of here today. Fine. After a long silence, he glanced at Folly and gritted his teeth. I'll stay, but you have to agree to one condition of mine. Good, good, good. Zuo-yong whisked his knife back in a flash. His tone transformed. His smile bloomed. Little junior brother, speak freely. Exactly. Yu Miao instantly resumed that gentle, elegant demeanor. We're all family. Your matters are our matters. I need to go to Rui Pavilion to buy that pill refined by the ghost doctor. Kaelan didn't hide it anymore. He laid out the problem plainly. Soul deficiency syndrome. After hearing the explanation, the two looked at each other in sudden understanding. From the very first glance at Folly, a faint sense that something wasn't quite right with this little girl had nagged at them, but at the time their minds were wholly fixed on Kael. And they hadn't thought carefully. They never expected it to be such a rare, fatal affliction. Young master, Folly's gaze dimmed. I'm sorry. I've dragged you down again. Don't say that. Kaelan rubbed her head, then turned a razor, thin smile toward the two across from him. Our second senior brother, Zuo-yong, and third senior sister, Yu Miao, are right here. Now that I, as their little junior brother, have run into trouble, they can't just stand by and watch. If they can truly help us resolve this, staying isn't a problem. I'll say this outright, second senior brother, Zuo-yong's cooking is indeed excellent. This time, it was Zuo-yong and Yu Miao's turn to feel awkward. Second senior brother, Yu Miao shot Kael a troubled glance, then tugged Zuo-yong aside. Their heads bent close, voices a rapid, urgent murmur. Should we really give it? Nonsense. But if you let him slip away, do you think eldest senior sister will forgive you when she comes back? A heavy sigh. Senior brother, senior sister. A deep satisfaction settled over Kael as he called out, his tone deliberately light. If it's too difficult, should we just forget it? Kid, Zuo-yong snapped his head around, eyes bloodshot. I can help you, but first, answer a few questions for me. Kael paused. He actually had a way. He'd only been trying to corner them. He hadn't expected it to lead anywhere. Let me ask you, Zuo-yong's voice strung tight. You cultivated an extreme realm, didn't you? Yes, Kael answered without hesitation. Then, Zuo-yong's throat bobbed. The spiritual pool you just carved out, how large is it? Inwardly, he had already made his decision. If Kael's spiritual pool exceeded 70 zhang, he'd hand over the item. Kael let the silence stretch for a single heartbeat. Boom! The spiritual power within him erupted, an overbearing aura shot skyward, so fierce the clouds above seemed ready to split. The air grew heavy, pressing down with tangible weight. Wild grass flattened in a circle around them, pinned to the earth. The spiritual pressure swept towards Zuo-yong and Yu Miao like a physical tide. Their robes snapped and plastered tight against their bodies. Yu Miao's jade needle quivered between her fingers, releasing a faint, near-inaudible hum. The two exchanged a glance. The shock in their eyes could no longer be hidden. Could someone in the Kai Convergence realm truly be this powerful? And this was just right after breaking through. Second senior brother, third senior sister. Kael withdrew his aura. Well, Zuo-yong stood mute. Well, it had surpassed it. He was absolutely certain now. The spiritual pool Kael opened utterly exceeded 70 zhang. Physical pain and something like burning anticipation warred behind his eyes. In the instant his pupils contracted, the knuckles of his knife, hand blanched bone, white. Help you I can, he finally spoke. The words dragged out. But you have to promise me one thing. Fine, Kael didn't even stop to think. You, Zuo-yong gaped. Aren't you going to ask what it is? Anything. Kael stroked Folly's head, his voice flat. I agreed to it all. Zuo-yong reassessed him with a few appraising looks, then slowly nodded. Fine. This matter relates to eldest senior sister. No rush. When she returns, she'll explain everything. Eldest senior sister. A thought stirred in Kael's mind. So Feng, Wu Ione, had a third person, after all. When will she come back? Her, Yu Miao sighed. She hasn't been back in 10 years. 10 years? Kael's brows drew together. Then who is the master of Feng? Wu Ione. What master? Both stared blankly. When we arrived, it was just eldest senior sister alone. We've never seen any master. The two of you, a wave of helplessness washed through Kael's chest. How exactly did you end up here? Eldest senior sister said my cooking is unparalleled under heaven. Zuo-yong patted the knife at his waist, brimming with pride. Me too. Yu Miao chuckled. She said my skill in making clothes is unmatched in the whole world. Just as he'd thought, a dull ache throbbed behind Kael's eyes. Every single person in this Feng Wu Ione was utterly unreliable. That pilt, he pinned them both with a skeptical stare. Do you really have a way? You're not bluffing me again, are you? Well, Zhuo Yong's hesitation returned. Senior brother, Yu Miao threw up her hands in exasperation. Little junior brother already agreed to stay. Just give it to him. Fine, fine. Zhuo Yong gritted his teeth. With a flip of his hand, he pulled something from his storage ring. Thumb, thick, roughly 3 inches long, jet, black, its surface slicked with a layer of thick, clinging fluid, impossible to identify at a glance. In the next heartbeat, a compound stench erupted. Rotting humus, rusted iron, and sharp ammonia all slammed together, thickening the air into something foul and cloying. Yu Miao's face twisted. She clapped a hand over her nose and retreated several paces, a jade needle at her wrist flaring with spiritual light to seal away the odor. Young master, Folly pinched her nose, her small face gone pale. It stinks so bad. Zhuo Yong stared down at that piece of something, his throat working. The physical pain and deep unwillingness in his eyes were impossible to hide. He dragged in a breath, swallowed the ache, and held it out toward Kael, his voice trembling. Little junior brother, here, take this and trade it for the pill. Kael reached out. The instant his fingers brushed that cold, slimy layer, a faint, rhythmic pulse traveled through his skin. The black, brown jerky-like strip still seemed to quiver with minute, livy-ng contractions. His face went green. He nearly vomited every bit of beast meat he'd just eaten. What kind of face is that? Zhuo Yong's indignation flared. This is your senior brother's treasure, kept at the bottom of the box. Countless people wept and begged for just a taste, and I never agreed. If you don't want it, then I truly have no other options. This thing is edible. Kael's face somehow turned even greener. Of course, Zhuo Yong glared. This is heart flesh of the peerless demon beast, its spiritual nature fully intact. If you don't want it, forget it. I want it. Kael ground his teeth, snatched the jerky, and stuffed it into his storage ring. Whether it worked or not, he'd try first. Anything was better than exposing the secrets on his body. He didn't waste another moment. He asked for the direction of Yueshan City, gave Folly a few brief instructions, turned, and strode away. Once his figure vanished, Yu Miao slowly retracted her gaze. Senior brother, don't you find it strange? What's strange? Zhuo Yong was still mourning that piece of meat, his attention scattered. Little junior brother cultivated an extreme realm. Those families aren't exactly small fish. How did you manage to fool him into coming here so easily? That's not called fooling. Zhuo Yong coughed dryly. That's called a benevolent deception. Aren't they the same thing? Zhuo Yong wisely shut his mouth. A moment of silence later, he frowned too. It is strange, really. He came from Great Kai Martial Academy. Forget Jade Pinnacle, Sect, even Azure Cloud Pavilion ought to be fighting tooth and nail for him. How on earth? Whoosh, 2 gazes landed simultaneously on Folly. She blinked, bewildered. What is it? Zhuo Yong plastered on a kindly smile and pulled out a strip of jerky. Smells good, doesn't it? Yeah, Folly's drool threatened to spill over. His dark face piled high with smiles. With a flick of his finger, a spiritual flame flared. Then shall we eat and chat at the same time? Feng Wu Iwen was remote, but only a few hundred lie from Yueshan City. At Kael's current cultivation, within 2 hours the outline of that immense city began to resolve in the distance, far grander than the royal capital of Great Kai. The road grew busier as he traveled. Rogue cultivators, sect disciples, a parade of robes and styles swept past. Kael ignored the wary glances and quickened his pace. Soon he stood before the city gates. The moment he stepped through, the clamor and energy of a prosperous city crashed over him. A bluestone avenue, several zhang wide, stretched straight toward the horizon. Shops lined both sides. Pills, treasure artifacts, spiritual cuisine, everything a cultivator could need was here. A mass of rogue cultivators squatted right on the ground. There wears a chaotic spread of bizarre, broken odds and ends before them. Their eyes swept back and forth, locked onto every potential mark. A deathly pale cultivator shot past him in a blur. Several figures hard on his heels, killing intent roiling in their eyes. The passers-by didn't even lift their eyelids, as if such a scene were utterly routine. Heh, a voice tinged with profound sentiment drifted from behind him. The world of cultivation. Survival of the fittest, no right or wrong. Weakness is the original sin. Young man, if you can't see through this truth, it'd be best not to stumble blindly in here. Kael sucked air through his teeth. Who was it this time with that familiar, insufferable tone? He turned. A slightly plump, middle-aged man was watching him with a grin. Are you speaking to me? If you think I am, then I am. Kael's molars itched with irritation. You remind me a lot of someone I met before. Heh heh, the man waved a hand, his face full of inscrutable depth. Passing strangers in the mortal dust, a meeting is fate itself. Why cling to the past? He strode off without another word. Kael's mouth twitched violently. He couldn't gauge the man's strength, otherwise he'd have given him a solid thrashing right then and there. Hey there, little brother. A rogue cultivator spotted Kael's unfamiliar face and eagerly waved him over, jabbing a finger at a scattering of rust-eaten, spiritually dead treasure. Artifacts on the ground, spittle flew as he worked himself into a fervor. All of these I risked my life to drag out of an ancient remnant estate. Pick whichever catches your eye. 800 no, 600 origin crystal, and it's yours. Kael turned and left without a word. Ancient remnant estate, a meridian opening realm peddler. Why not just claim he'd dug them out of a forbidden zone? A silent sigh slipped from him at this place, a murky pool where the genuine and the counterfeit swam side by side. But his feet didn't slow an inch. After roughly a quarter hour, he finally found Rui Pavilion. Kaelan's gaze snagged on the tower and refused to let go. 9 stories it climbed, each tier of sweeping eaves and carved brackets pressing down on the surrounding buildings like a lord among beggars. The Murong clan's inn, which had seemed grand moments before, now looked squat. Torin's treasure vault pavilion, shabby. Beside Rui Pavilion, they were afterthoughts. A crowd already churned at its base. When Kaelan had first entered Yuetian City, the sun had been a brand in the sky. The market streets boiled with bodies, hawkers bellowing, buyers spitting prices, and somewhere always the ring of steel as tempers flared. On one corner, 2 rogue cultivators had torn into each other over a single spirit herb, the fight ending when a palm strike folded one man into the cobblestones. The blood he coughed up still steamed. Passers-by glanced once, flat-eyed, and kept moving. In this world, the strong ate and the weak were meat. It was that simple. A paunchy middle-aged man had materialized at Kaelan's elbow somewhere in the press, shaking his head and sighing something oily about cultivation being predation. When Kaelan didn't even twitch in response, the man's mouth puckered and he oozed back into the crowd. A few steps later, a cultivator with a face like a starved monkey slunk close, his voice dropping to a whisper as he offered treasures leaked from some ancient secret realm. Kaelan's eyelids didn't so much as flicker. He wove through the chaos, and then the whole world opened up before him. Rui Pavilion. The tower thrust up from the earth like a crouched beast, tiered eaves layered one atop the next, silent and watchful at the city's heart. Sunlight bled across its glazed tiles in molten, gold sheets. Before the entrance, blue flagstones shimmered with half-visible array patterns that pressed an unseen weight onto the air, muffling the noise of the street by 3 full degrees. A ring of onlookers had formed. From inside, it drifted thin cries and the ugly music of curses. Kaelan's cultivation was more than enough. He slipped through the bodies with little effort, the brush of fabric against fabric a soft rasp, and emerged at the front. At the center stood a boy of perhaps 7 or 8, ping, cheeked and bright-eyed, the sort of face old women pinched in the marketplace. Behind him hunched an old man with graying hair and a spine like a question mark. Facing them was a girl with a round face, delicate, almost pretty. Her eyes were red, rimmed now, her words tripping over themselves. I really am here to buy a pill. Buy, the boy's whole face twisted with scorn. Can you afford it? Do you even know what Rui Pavilion is? A lowly thing like you. You think you can just walk in here? I do have money. The girl's hands flew to her storage ring, pulling out more than a dozen spirit source. Her voice went tight. My brother gave them all to me. Spirit source? And you've got a storage ring? The boy's eyes narrowed, venom pooling there. Where'd your worthless brother get his hands on goods like that? Unless he stole them from the clan. No, the girl's voice spiked sharp. My brother earned every piece fighting demon beasts, finishing missions. It's got nothing to do with the clan. Don't you dare slander him. Young master, the old man's smile unspooled slow. Stolen or not, we can always take it back and test it. The boy's face lit with ugly inspiration. He pinned the girl with his stare. Young Lan, whether it's stolen, that's not for you to say. Hand those things over right now, or you'll be tasting plenty of suffering today. No, my brother gave them to me. You can't take them. Sounds like a guilty conscience to me. The boy's voice climbed into a shriek. Like mother, like spawn. Everything from a cheap woman comes out cheap. Young Fu sees her. Drag her back, let the clan rules sort her out. I'm a disciple of Jade Pinnacle sect now. Young Lan stumbled backward. The old man's hand locked around her wrist, fingers sinking deep. Dark purple bruises bloomed where he gripped. His tone stayed unhurried. The name Jade Pinnacle sect might mean something elsewhere. but before the Yong family Yonglan's tears broke. They hit the blue stone in small, shattering puffs. My brother and I already left the clan. Why won't you just leave us alone? Leave you alone? The boy's malice was ancient, far older than his years. I can't stand that cheap woman, and I can't stand her cheap spawn. You want me to leave you alone? Fine. Die, then I'll leave you alone. Gods, who does that? Someone actually bullying her like this. Quiet, keep your voice down. That's the Yong family's young master. We can't afford to cross him. Yong? Which Yong? Which one do you think? One of the three great clans, the Yong family. The whispers seeped into Kaelan's ears. A thread of sympathy pulled somewhere deep in his chest for this Yonglan, but he had no intention of playing hero. The title of Fengwu Yuan's head disciple wouldn't carry much weight here. He'd come for a pill. Getting tangled in someone else's mess was a fool's game. He shook his head, turned, and stepped into the main hall. His eyes swept across the interior and landed on a man who looked like a steward. Esteemed guest, the steward smiled. What are your instructions? I've come to... Outside, the girl's plea cut through like a blade. Young master, the spirit source, the storage ring. I'll give them all to you, but please, just let me buy medicine first. Senior brother Jiang, his wound still hasn't healed. He's waiting for me to come back. A cry of shock followed before she could finish. HMPH, before this, young master, what right do you have to bargain? Seize her? Kaelan's feet stopped. Silence hung for a beat. Guest, the steward smiled again. Do you have any instructions? I'll return in a moment. Kaelan spun back, pushing through the crowd once more. He saw Yonglan, her face wet with tears, her arm clamped in the old man's grip as he dragged her forward. The boy stood with both hands behind his back, radiating the full, insufferable weight of his station. Wait, Kaelan said. I have a few questions for her. The boy's brow furrowed. Are you talking to me? Kaelan ignored him. His gaze settled on Yonglan's face, his voice flat and even. This senior brother Jiang you mentioned, is his name Joran? Yes, Yonglan froze. How do you know that? Kaelan didn't answer. He asked instead, what is he to you? Senior brother Jiang and I. A rush of color flooded the girl's cheeks. Words failed her. Kaelan needed nothing more. A wave of speechlessness washed through him. Brother Jiang, who'd always seemed so earnest, so guileless, actually, and barely days had passed since they'd seen each other. Yonglan, the boy had caught the change in her face, and his voice curdled further. You've barely been in the sect a few days, and you've already latched onto some man. Tusk senior brother Jiang, how sweet you sound. Your mother seduced my father back then. Now look at you, doing the exact same thing. A cheap woman's spawn stays cheap. You're lying. Yonglan shook, fury and tears warring in her eyes. My mother is not. Let her go. Kaelan's voice wasn't loud. It cut into the noise anyway, sharp and clean as a drawn edge. The boy stared like he'd just heard the most ridiculous joke in the world. Disbelief twisted his features. You say that again? I said. Kaelan's face was utterly blank. Each word came out separate, distinct. Let her go. In that single moment, every sound around them died. Inside the wall of bodies, the only thing left was the faint, cold clink of the jade pendant at Yong Fei's waist, a small, crisp ring spreading outward into the hush. The dangers of the journey needed no retelling. Several days later, Kaelan, with Folly strapped to his back, finally caught sight of that barren, low hill. Fengwu Yuan? At the base, the entrance exam had long since finished. Those who'd failed were already filing away, strips of dried meat clutched in their hands, their expressions complicated. Kaelan's mouth twitched. Folly just stared at the dried meat, practically drooling. A hill, barren, low. Rubble everywhere, dead vines crawling over the wreckage. Two thatched huts leaned drunkenly halfway up the slope, and whenever the wind passed through, the rotting timbers groaned, a thin, creaking sigh. The spiritual energy here ran denser than the outside world, but when Kaelan pulled a breath of it into his throat, something sharp and strange pricked at his senses. He frowned. 20 or 30 young people stood dumbstruck at the foot of the hill, their faces slack and empty. Kaelan was among them. Facing them stood a man built like a dark tower, easily over 3 meters tall. He wore an honest, simple smile. The bone, filleting dagger at his waist, caught the light in thin, cold flashes, a strange counterpoint to that swarthy, grinning face. Everyone, the man said, his tone thick with satisfaction, welcome to the entrance examination of Fengwu Yuan. Each of you possesses outstanding talent, deep foundations, but formalities, I'm afraid, cannot be avoided. From the crowd, a young man's voice wavered. Is this really Fengwu Yuan? Of course. The giant bent down, rummaged through the weeds with one huge hand, and hoisted up a stone tablet that was a solid third broken. Dirt showered down. Through the mottled moss, 3 wild, flamboyant characters stood carved. Feng Wu Yuan. Kaelon's eyes landed on it. His heart went cold. He'd been scammed. Everyone else just stood there, dumbstruck, staring at the shattered stone tablet. Then, the young man's face had already drained of color. This has to be the outer courtyard of Feng. Wu Yuan, right. Definitely? Yes, once we pass the assessment, maybe we'll get to see the actual inner sect. Feng Wu Yuan has never separated inner and outer sects. The crowd's newborn hope shattered completely. The cook, or so Kael had assumed, studied their faces. He shook his head. One shouldn't judge a book by its cover. On the surface, Feng Wu Yuan might look a little humble, but our foundations. Wait, Kael's eyes snapped wide open. Aren't you a cook? How the hell are you the second senior brother? I am a cook. The man offered a genial smile, as if he still remembered him. I also happen to be the second senior brother. A pit of ice opened in Kael's stomach. So how many people does Feng Wu Yuan even have? The man held up 3 fingers. 30, a stranger's brow furrowed deep, still way too few. 3. The crowd erupted. 3 people, and you've got the nerve to call yourselves a sect. I traveled day and night for half a month. Are you just screwing with me? A 3-person sect. What exactly was the point of being the top disciple? Kael finally understood the weird look Murong River had thrown him earlier. He'd jumped straight into a pit of fire. Ah, the man sighed. Well, you're already here, so... Kael's footsteps stopped dead. He was right, they were already here. If he stormed off now, he'd not only waste a few days, but he'd nearly capsized at that Demoness's hands no matter how you counted it. It was a loss. Most of the crowd gradually stopped too. They had no way back, same as Kael. The rest had long since vanished into the hills. The swarthy man's face beamed with delight. This many staying was well beyond his expectations. Whoever chooses Feng Wu Yuan has damn fine judgment. Every face answered with naked contempt. Choose, they'd had no choice at all. Quit dawdling. Someone barked. That exam thing, get on with it. Fair enough, the man nodded. I need to bang it out fast. Still have to head back and cook later. Kael gave Folly a light pat on the head, his expression a touch sour. Just wait a little longer. Soon you can eat as much as you want. Ignoring the glares, the man flicked his wrist and retrieved a palm-sized mystic jade from his storage ring. It was pristine, white, and flawless, a halo of light rippling across its surface like water. A heavenly phoenix was carved into its crown, 9 tail feathers rendered in exquisite detail, each feather dripping with faint, almost breath, like light. The air around it grew subtly warmer. One glance and everyone felt that bird might burst to life at any moment. The same young man who'd spoken up earlier stepped forward with a surly face, grabbed the mystic jade, and gave it a couple of indifferent glances. His face flushed a deep crimson, veins bulged on his forehead. He had clearly reached his limit. Then, instead of advancing, the scarlet shrank back. It faded slowly until the mystic jade let out a long, mournful cry, and its light died completely. The man shook his head. A flicker of disappointment passed through his eyes. That young man's cultivation wasn't weak. Among the dozen or so present, he was among the best, but the mystic jade had, in a blink, drained back to its original color. The man sighed and pulled a bunch of dried meat strips from his storage ring. He handed them out one by one, a touch of guilt on his face. Didn't pass. But I can't just send you off empty-handed. Take these. A small token from Feng Wu Yuan. The failures accepted the jerky, expressions tangled. Some bowed their heads in silence, others opened their mouths, as if to speak, but never made a sound. For a long moment, no one moved. Zhuoyang turned to Kael and smiled. Here, take these. He didn't wait for refusal, just shoved a strip each into Kael's and Folly's hands. You've come all this way. I can't let you leave with nothing. Awkwardness hung heavy over the group. Accept it, and they'd feel a touch ridiculous. Refuse, and this whole trip was truly for nothing. They'd eaten Zhuoyang's personally roasted beast meat before. They knew with absolute clarity how terrifying a spiritual power hid inside those unremarkable-looking strips. As soon as the crowd left, Zhuoyang fixed his eyes on Kael. His face was thick with gratification and excitement. Come, follow me up the mountain. Time to meet your third senior sister. Wait, Kael only got out a syllable. In the next instant, Zhuoyang's spiritual energy surged. A whirlwind swept Kael and Folly along, rocketing them to the hillside, right in front of 2 thatched huts. Yu Miao studied Kael with undisguised curiosity. It's him. Zhuoyang spread his palm open, trembling with barely contained excitement. Junior sister, look. This, Yu Miao's eyes narrowed, and then amazement bloomed across her face. It's shattered. Senior brother, you've truly picked up a treasure this time. Heh heh. Zhuo Yong scratched his head all modesty. Just luck, just luck. Picked up. Kael's expression went dark. Yours was clearly outright fraud. Little miss, Yu Miao turned a gentle smile toward Folly. What's your name? I'm Folly. Folly, Yu Miao laughed softly. That's wonderful. To have such pure spiritual energy at your age. That's rare. Come, come. Zhuo Yong tugged Kael over with enthusiasm. This is your third senior sister, Yu Miao. I'm your second senior brother, Zhuo Yong. Starting today, we're family. Kael ran through the logic in his head. Second senior brother and third senior sister both here. If he, as the junior disciple, ever ran into trouble, they couldn't just stand aside and do nothing. If they could really help untangle his mess, staying was no problem, and honestly, second senior brother's cooking was genuinely good. Zhuo Yong seemed to be seeing Kael for the first time, sizing him up a few times before finally nodding, slow and deliberate. Courtyard master, Zhuo Yong and Yu Miao looked utterly lost. When we arrived, there was only the eldest senior sister. We never saw any courtyard master. Senior brother Zhuo Yong, Yu Miao said, exasperated. Junior brother Kael already agreed to stay. Just give it to him. Junior brother Kael, here, take this and trade it for spirit pills. Senior brother Zhuo Yong, doesn't this strike you as strange? What's strange? Zhuo Yong was still fixated on that strip of meat, his mind 100 miles away. Junior brother Kael, cultivated to the extreme realm. Those sects aren't blind. How did you trick them so easily? In a flash, Zhuo Yong's and Yu Miao's gazes locked onto Folly. A cultivator with a face drained of color shot past Kael. Several figures tore after him, murderous intent boiling in their eyes. The passers-by didn't even blink, as if such scenes were as ordinary as breathing. Kael turned and kept walking. An ancient immortal's legacy estate, just a meridia, an opening stage, might as well claim you dug it out of a forbidden ground. Marveling silently at how this place swarmed with both dragons and bottom feeders, Kael didn't slow his steps. A quarter hour later, he finally found Ruyi Pavilion. Outside the building, a crowd had gathered. Faint voices of argument drifted out. Kael's eyes sharpened, but he didn't bother to listen. His trip here was only for spirit pills. He slid through the crowd and walked straight into the main hall. A man dressed in steward's robes greeted him with a smile. Esteemed guest, how may I assist you?